This is Meaningful Things, hosted by Rob Michael.
Welcome, my name is Rob, and this is the second episode of my Meaningful Things podcast, where things will be informative, intriguing, and exciting, and I encourage participation from my listeners and viewers. I can be reached at my website and Facebook at iamrobmichael.com. That's my website and Facebook at iamrobmichael.com. Now here we'll discuss a wide range of issues, both current and past events. Our topic during this episode will be Emmett Till, his death, and how it galvanized the movement, and how new evidence questions whether his accuser, who is still alive, should be brought to justice. Before I go any further, I must say this occurred in the South, Mississippi, to be exact, during the 1950s. And that's when racial tensions were very high, very high. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old fun-loving boy, playful, jokester, and this was said by family and friends that knew him. They spoke of his playful ways with a jokester. We're talking about a 14-year-old African-American boy who was born to working-class parents on the south side of Chicago. He went to Money, Mississippi, to visit family down there. And at the time, he stayed with his great uncle, Moses Wright. He was murdered in a racist attack that shocked the nation, and it actually provided a catalyst for the emerging civil rights movement. Emmett was murdered August 28, 1955. Not exactly what did he do. Well, Emmett was accused of going to the store that Carolyn Bryant worked in. He brought some candy. But they said on his way out, he was supposedly heard saying "bye, baby" to this woman, Carolyn Bryant, behind the counter. Now, back during that time, I just said how racial tensions were back during the 50s. Well, this type of language was taboo at this time in the South. You could not speak to any white person like this at this time in the South. But also note that there were no witnesses to this account other than Carolyn Bryant, the woman behind the counter. So she also later claimed that he grabbed her, made lewd advances, and wolf whistled at her as he walked out the store. You mean to tell me this 14-year-old boy was a dude? He was supposed to have done all of that, and nobody said or did nothing. She didn't say or do anything, and she didn't tell anybody. Kind of hard to believe he did any of it. But we'll go on in the story. We know that Carolyn Bryant was Emmett's accuser. What was her excuse or reason for accusing him of these things? Well, she was said to be acting on affairs in Mississippi at the time that was started by a state judge whose name is Thomas Pickensbury, who won the Supreme Court 1954 decision, Brown versus Board of Education, to desegregate schools would spark a wave of interracial sex. This grown man said these children start a wave of interracial sex. Listen closely. Brady said in his speech delivered just weeks after the ruling, saying young blacks would be emboldened by the court's verdict to try to date a white woman or even rape them. So I guess that couldn't be in the reverse. White child or white woman wanting to be with a black child. I guess that couldn't happen. It would always have to be the little black kids or the blacks wanting to cross over. But that's how these rumors, that's how this negativity, that's how a lot of this bigotry gets started. Well, we're going to move on, folks. So, who was Emmett's murderers? Well, the first one was Carolyn Bryant's husband, Roy Bryant, and secondly named in that was his half-brother, J.W. Milam. Now, these two men went to the home of Emmett Till's uncle, Moses Wright, and this was in the early morning hours of August 28th. They went in there with flashlights, gun in hand, and they forced Emmett into the car, terrifying all the other children grown-ups in the house at this time. They drove him around all night and perhaps were beating him in a tool shed behind Milam's residence. By all accounts, the stories that were told. They beat this 14-year-old child nearly to death. They gouged out his eyes, shot him in the head, then tied his body to a cotton gin fan with barbed wire, fan weighing around 70 pounds, and threw him in the Tallahatchie River. It's not enough that they killed him. They had to kill him this way. The body was found, and there were charges filed. These charges were kidnapping and murder. But despite overwhelming evidence of the defendant's guilt, on September 23rd, a jury of all white males acquitted Bryan and Milam of all charges. They were acquitted of all charges after going to his great uncle's house, getting him, beating him, throwing his body in a river. They were acquitted of all charges, with deliberations lasting only 67 minutes. So once again, this was during a time in history, folks, whereas blacks and women were not allowed to sit on a jury for jury duty. That meant all male white jurors. And at the time, they said the only reason why deliberations lasted that long was because they took a soda break. A few months later, in January 1956, guess what they did? They admitted to committing the crime, and that's because they were protected by double jeopardy. They told the whole story of how they kidnapped and killed Emmett to then Look magazine for $4,000. So, the state of Mississippi acquitted them of all charges, saying that they didn't do it and that wasn't sure that body was Emmett's body, really. That's why they were acquitted. And because the only way it was recognizable was by a ring on his finger, but I'll get to that further. So, along with Emmett's uncle, Moses Wright, pointing out the two that abducted Emmett from his home, another witness, Willie Reed, well, he also bravely stepped forward to testify of the beatings in the barn that Emmett was taken to, and he tells how he heard Emmett being beaten in the barn. Well, this gentleman was then moved to Chicago for his own safety. Now, these are just two of the individuals that testified on Emmett's behalf. So, where is Emmett's accuser now, and how does she feel about his death? Well, it is said that Carolyn Bryan is residing somewhere in North Carolina, and in telling her story to historian and author Timothy Tyson, she has since recanted her statement and said that the young boy did nothing wrong and that he didn't deserve what happened to him. Wow. She just realized that? Or maybe she's got somewhat of a heart now that she's getting older. Wait, let me say that again. Maybe folks didn't catch it. The state of Mississippi acquitted the two of any kidnapping or murder, which is what they were charged with. They went to his uncle's house and took him from there. By their own admission, they killed him. But because of double jeopardy laws, nothing could happen to them back then, especially back then. So where's the justice in any of that? Well, there was none. Because also, since that has happened, and in more current, recent times, a warrant was found in the basement of a courthouse, an old warrant in Mississippi, having all three individuals named on it: Carolyn Bryant, Roy Bryant, and J.W. Milam. Now, the charge is kidnapping, and from the knowledge I have of criminal law, Carolyn Bryant could not be charged with kidnapping because she was not there at the time he was taken from his uncle's house. She did not murder him. She was not there. But depending on her testimony of what she said to them at the time, conspiracy charges sound like those are in order. She might have conspired to have him murdered by what she said. She didn't murder him, she didn't kidnap him. But conspiracy is still a charge to be looked at and having her charged with. Now, I want to just mention a few of the other individuals that was said to, at some point, have something to do with Emmett's death or the discovery thereof Emmett. You know, you have Melvin Campbell, according to FBI investigations, was with Marlon Bryant when Emmett was kidnapped and murdered. Accessory. Hubert Clark, alleged to have also been involved in the murder and kidnapping of Emmett, according to a 2004-2006 FBI investigation. Now, this claim originated in reports issued in 1955, as well as being confirmed by none other than J.W. Milam in a conversation with a friend. You have also a gentleman by the name of Levy Too Tight Collins, who said to have participated in Till's murder. This is by various witnesses. He was also employed by J.W. Milam and was allegedly in the truck the morning Emmett was taken to the Sheridan plantation. Well, what the sheriff at the time, then H.C. Strider, would do is he placed him in jail elsewhere in Tallahatchie County under a false name to prevent them from testifying. And by the way, Levy Too Tight Collins, he was a black man said to have assisted in Emmett's death. Next, you have Robert Hodges. He was the young fisherman that discovered Emmett's body in the Tallahatchie River and was a witness for the prosecution. Joe Hubbard, he was alleged by Theodore Roosevelt Mason to have been with J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant in the murder of Emmett Till. Now, this claim was also put forth by two other writers who published investigative pieces that this gentleman had something with Emmett's death. He was a black man. Lee Loggins. He's also believed to have been with J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant during the kidnapping and murder of Emmett. He was employed by none other than J.W. Milam at the time of the murder. It's odd because he went missing himself shortly thereafter. So even some of these individuals that participated in Emmett's death or had a hand in it, some of them wind up disappearing also. Something to think about, folks. Or as they used to say, things that make you go, I feel that the irony behind the story, over all that's been said, is that it took a young black aspiring filmmaker from Louisiana whose research and curiosity is what got the FBI to reopen the case to investigate the findings. But yet, it appears they were pretty impressed with what he gathered. That's why they reopened the case. And also understand that some of the individuals named as possible co-conspirators or co-actors that participated in Emmett's death, well, all the perpetrators were not white, as I just pointed out to you. Whether they voluntarily participated or were forced to and then wind up disappearing themselves for whatever reason. Ms. Bryant, at this time, she's in her upper 80s, 87, 88 years old. But the question is, should she be made to answer the question as to why she lied, resulting in the death of a 14-year-old boy? Should she be put on the stand? Some may say, well, she's too old, or that was a long time ago, things of that nature. Well, I have an argument for that too. Harvey Weinstein in the 70s, Bill Cosby in his 80s, both had to answer the charges. And both did time, yet they didn't kill anyone, nor did they conspire to kill anyone. So it's not making light of what they did, just comparing the fact that if they had to do time for their crimes, then why shouldn't she? Why should she not have to pay for the lies she told in causing the 14-year-old boy's death? And after having something so heinous to happen to a 14-year-old on the premise of a lie, then what type talk should we have as a community to prevent incidents like this from happening again? What will our politicians do to equally bring about justice when it comes to incidents such as the Emmett Till murder? And has a whole lot changed within the 67 years since his murder? I think not, because I just want to read this again. He was so deformed when his body was pulled from the river after the beatings that he was only recognizable by by the monograph ring he was wearing with the initials on it. And this was given to him by his father, who was also deceased at this time. Southerners in Mississippi at the time who worked diligently to try to have a quick burial at some small cemetery in the middle of nowhere so that this would easily be forgotten about and go away. But that didn't happen. Emmett Till's mom made sure that did not happen. She wanted the whole world to know of this atrocity, and they should. Emmett's mom had him return to Chicago, and though it hurt her to do it, she had an open casket at her son's funeral so that the whole world could see what happened to her son in America, with no kind of justice for Emmett coming from the government, not then nor now. And that's what we still demand, justice. These cases may be old, but individuals, for what they did, still need to pay for it. So again, what kind of conversations should we be having in our communities, in our households, about racism and being confronted with it, such as what happened to Emmett? What can we as a community do along with our local politicians to bring about justice and prevent individuals from committing such acts? Well, we may not be able to prevent individuals from committing these acts, but when they're brought to justice and they have to pay for what was done, that could possibly deter a lot of this. And I want to speak briefly about the young man that had this case reopened. Keith Beauchamp was a young, aspiring amateur filmmaker that was curious about Emmett's murder, and he began an investigation on it. And because of the things he discovered, brought the kind of attention that led the FBI to reopen the case. So in a nutshell, folks, Till's murder did not happen in vain, but until some form of justice comes about, what can we say? Still feel that Carolyn Bryant be brought to justice if it's on nothing other than conspiracy charges. So if you like this podcast, folks, I'd ask that you contact me either on my Facebook page, on my website, robmichael.com, or give me a like on my YouTube channel. If there are particular topics or subjects that you'd like to discuss or would like for me to research, let me know when you contact me, and I'll see how soon I can get to that topic that you spoke of, because this is the type podcast where we can have that type dialogue. We can agree to disagree and still, enjoy ourselves, still learn, still have this be informative. So once again, thank you for listening in. Until the next time, God bless, take care, and I'll talk to you then.